Hello everyone and welcome to Lobo and today's video is about Ellie's condition. Now I already did a video where I talked a little bit about it because I said basically that Joel did nothing wrong and the doctor didn't have a clue what he was doing, and I stand by that video and I explained basically that you cannot create a vaccine for a fungus. Fungus normally are treated with antibiotics and other type of drugs, but normally are extracted either from other organisms, plants or something like that. But that is if she's infected, and if she was infected, her immune system would be fighting the infection, and that's what it means to be immune. Your immune system is actually capable of fighting off the infection by itself, creating antibodies or other products that fight off the infection. But I actually feel stupid as a biologist because I didn't see these details in the game. And if you haven't checked it out, check out in the end of this video game theories, because they actually were the ones that showed me this, and they were completely right in the analysis that they did, and they did a great job. But I'm going to break it down in my own way what they basically are saying in that video, and I'm going to explore a little further than they did. So if Ellie was immune, we would see her immune system responding to this fungus. Her blood cells, for example, her white blood cells would be up because they would be, again, fighting off the infection. Instead, we actually see through her blood samples, where we hear it in audio logs in the first game, and we see actually shards in the second game, that their blood counts are actually extremely low. That means her immune system is actually being suppressed. That's not normal when you're immune to an infection and you're infected. That shouldn't happen unless your system is not actually fighting off the infection and you're not immune. But they say they saw the fungus, she was bitten, they saw that she's infected with the quadriceps, it's in her brain. So okay, what's going on? Like the quadriceps in real life, there's not just one species, you have a lot of different species, and just a couple of them actually cause that zombie-like symptoms in the hands from where they based the game on. But there are others that are actually not harmful at all, and they produce some drugs, some interesting drugs, and some drugs that we actually use in modern medicine, such as cyclosporine, an immunosuppressive drug that we use, for example, for organ transplant to reduce the possibility of rejection of that organ, because the immune system is going to see that organ as an external organism and is going to try to reject it. But with suppressive drugs, you suppress the immune system, you give time for the system to adapt to that new organ. But now you're thinking, okay, she's not infected with the quadriceps that causes the zombification, but she's still inhaling spores from this other fungus, so she should be infecting also by that other fungus and turning? Why isn't she? Well, cyclosporine has another function. It's also antifungal. So that drug actually attacks other fungus besides the fungus that produces it. And now everything makes sense. Not only is that drug, cyclosporine, in her system, making her immune system go down, but it's also fighting off the entry of other fungus. So that quadriceps that causes zombification, when it enters into Ellie's body, it faces cyclosporine, and cyclosporine stops that fungus from growing inside of her. And that's not being immune. She's not immune, she's just as another fungus in her that is producing a drug that is fighting off that infection. And suddenly now everything makes sense. Every breadcrumb that was put in the game. For example, Marlene in the first game tells Joel that the fungus had mutated and that's why she was immune. Now she is kind of right and wrong at the same time. Now she and that famous doctor understood that that fungus was different, but they didn't go deep enough and understood that it was not the same species, and it was not just a simple mutation, and again that she was not immune. And now that we understand that, was the doctor again right or wrong in his approach? Again, we need to understand that this doctor analyzed her for like a couple of hours and immediately decided, okay, let's do that same procedure that I already did in other patients, and that led to their deaths. Instead of, I don't know, waiting, doing some tests for a couple of days, weeks, months, because again, science is done with time. You cannot just rush a theory, especially when a human being's life is on the line. But this stupid doctor decided, no, my theory is completely correct and let's rush it. But actually, if he killed Ellie, he would kill the kid too, because again, this fungus is producing that drug, a drug that you could probably easily extract from Ellie's blood or body without killing her. And if you extract the fungus from her brain and kill her, you would kill the fungus, because this fungus apparently would not survive without a host, at least not for what we know so far. And even if you had to take a sample of the fungus, you could do that without killing the patient. There's such a thing as a biopsy, where you extract a small portion of brain without killing the subject. So again, the theory of this doctor was completely wrong all along. It was not needed to create a vaccine. What you needed was to extract that drug and find a way to produce it in mass. Now this drug would not be a complete solution. Now probably would be able to treat people before they get infected. Like for example, if you're going to a place that is contaminated, you could take the drug for a period of time to avoid getting contaminated. So the spores, when they would get in, they would find the drug and they would not be able to include and get the fungus to grow. And maybe you would be able to treat early stages of infection, so people who have not turned into zombies yet and were still rational, because the fungus is starting to grow but it still hasn't taken control of the brain yet. But I doubt it would be able to treat, for example, clickers or runners. Those people would already be too far for cyclosporine to be able to fight off the infection, and that probably the damage to the brain was already done. But now there's another important question. How did Ellie get infected by that drug? I have two theories. The first one is that when she was bitten, the fungus mutated and it emerged a new species from that mutation that created cyclosporine. Now that theory, for me, doesn't hold any water, because mutation is not as easy as that. It would be just too convenient. It would be just a bad explanation. It would be like that science that you need to shut your brain off to believe that she got bitten and a random mutation occurred that created a good fungus that had completely the opposite effect of the fungus before. Now that for me doesn't make any sense. What makes sense is that before she was bitten, she had already contracted this fungus. Whether it was playing around, in some way she just breathed the air with that particular version of the fungus, and it was already in her when she was bitten. So she thought that she was going to turn. She would never turn because she already had a cyclosporine inside of her, but of course nobody tested it before to know that she was already infected. And in my theory, I think a lot of other people are in the same situation. But for example, in quarantine zones, like they were in the beginning of the first game, people test if you're infected, but they don't do a very specific test. So probably a lot of people were actually infected with the good quadriceps species and got killed by the government because they didn't know that those people were not going to turn, much less that they were actually the solution to finding a cure. I do think that's a lot more plausible than just a random mutation occurred when Ellie was bitten. A lot of people probably were infected with this other fungus, and probably that fungus maybe evolved in a parallel way to when the quadriceps started infecting people. So probably a lot of different fungal types are able to infect people in this universe. But because people were only seeing the effect of the bad one, they had no idea that the other ones existed. But again, that last part is just pure speculation. I don't even think that Naughty Dog and whoever wrote this part of the game thought hard about it. But I'm actually surprised to how everything fits well when you understand that fungus that is infecting Ellie is not the same quadricep that causes the zombification. But again, do you think that now everything makes sense? And again, please check out Game Theory's channel and video because he explains in a much easier way, I think, than I did. And that's it for me today. I'm probably going to do another video on The Last of Us very soon, and it's going to be why Abby is a psychopath. And yes, I'm going to break down that Abby is without any doubt a psychopath. I'll see you next time.
Do it! Just do it!